Welcome to Season 2 of the Leopard Podcast. This season, I speak with visionary lodge owners operating in Africa's most remote and pristine regions. Get ready for tales of deep commitment to conservation, extraordinary wildlife, and the dedication it takes to run a lodge at the edge of the world. So we're talking about Southern Tanzania, which is an exciting topic because it's a place not many people know about and not many people visit. So perhaps we can kick off by discussing a little bit about the difference in feeling that you get on safari in Ruaha or Nyerere compared to somewhere more well-known like the Serengeti.
Sure. Well, I mean, the biggest sort of difference between the Serengeti and Ruaha and Nyerere, and I should speak widely for Southern Tanzania as well, because it's similar for all the parks down there. But the biggest difference is that it's uncrowded. So when you go on your game drives, it's just you, wildlife, and nature. You're not having to share it with loads of other people. But it's also in far more remote locations as well. So speaking to the feeling of a safari, you're more immersed into the wilderness of Africa. To put it in perspective, the Serengeti had about 250,000 visitors. I think the number's actually closer to 500,000 now per year, whereas Ruaha National Park, for example, had just 20,000 for the year. Katavi, only 1,000. So all of that leads to the feeling of being really far in the wilderness, far from civilization, man-made infrastructure, and with less vehicles and tourists, you haven't got that sort of impeding your view. So yeah, an immersive experience, definitely.
And you can really say that you're one of the lucky few if you have visited Southern Tanzania, one of 20,000 people a year. It's not many people that actually get to experience this, which I think is the exclusivity of it is something that's really appealing to a lot of people.
Vast areas as well. So when you're talking about fewer vehicles and fewer people, but it's over larger areas. Over half of Tanzania's protected land is in the south. So it's more spread out as well. And so when you're thinking you're one of the lucky few, when you're on your game drives, not everyone's going to the exact same places. So it might be that you've just gone to a part of the park no one else has been to for months. It's very magical in that way.
And I can imagine the guiding experience or the safari experience is also quite different from the north in terms of not being in communication with many other vehicles, like finding your sightings, doing your own tracking, not being in radio contact with hundreds of other vehicles that are out there looking for all the stars of the show. So I'm sure that also creates quite a different experience when you find a lion sighting, it's only for you, that kind of thing.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's true that when you have more vehicles, more guides out there, we call it, a network safari. You can communicate with each other. So there is a benefit to that in that you can perhaps find more spectacular sightings faster. But down south, you're doing it the old-fashioned way, and you're having to rely on the guides' skills of tracking animal behavior. Footprints, and the guest feels more like an explorer, not just an observer. You're a part of the process of finding the wildlife.
And I'm sure you don't see many other people out see many other vehicles around you, right? So if a guest is on safari in, I don't know, Ruaha, for example, how common is it for people to see other visitors in the park at the same time as them?
It differs a little bit between the parks of the south. So, I mean, the key ones we're operating in is Katavi, Ruaha, Nyerere, Mikumi. And I'd say Nyerere National Park and Mikumi National Park are the perhaps more popular parts of the south. In no way nearly as popular or busy as the north, but we consider busier than, say, Ruaha and Katavi. So in Nyerere and Mikumi, you're looking at maybe, let's talk about spectacular sighting, which would draw the most, 5, 6, 7, maybe a few. And then you're thinking like, yeah, okay, this is a spectacular sighting. But if you're looking at just sort of a normal day sighting, you'd be on your own or maybe one or two vehicles. Then when you go to Ruaha, you know, often it's so vast, the areas the game drive is taking place. You can see the most spectacular sighting in the world and be on your own for the whole day. Or you may be less lucky and it happens that some others have been around, so you're sharing with two or three other vehicles. But you're not going up into like the tens. And then in Katavi, I mean, it'd be a real shame if you had to share with anybody else, no matter what side you're looking at. So, you know, it's quiet throughout, but there are small differences in what to expect in terms of vehicle numbers.
Right. So northern Tanzania, we all know it as being so famous, especially the Serengeti, for the great wildebeest migration. So I think people have heard about it, seen it on nature documentaries. They know people who've been there and seen the migration, and it really is a spectacular thing to see. So if we say that the Great Migration is the iconic experience to have in the northern part of Tanzania, what would you say is an iconic species or experience or wildlife that you can find in the southern parts? And you can talk about per area if you want, or just in general for the south.
Well, I mean, exactly. I mean, there's a reason why the north is busy. It's because there is amazing things to see, including the migration. But down south, you know, there is incredible things to see as well. So it can't be, you know, it's a shame to be overshadowed by the migration. And I would start by saying it's firstly, our wildlife doesn't go anywhere. It stays put all year round. Ruaha in particular sits in a convergent zone between Africa's eastern and southern species. So it means that we get both rather than just one or the other. So, you know, the greater and lesser kudu, for example, and so much a greater spectrum of wildlife species to see. But then if I just briefly go by national park, in Nyerere you've got 2/3 of the world's wild dog population. In Ruaha you've got 10% of the entire world's lion population with the highest density. So you're not going to see more lion in any other national park. In prides of over 20. It's also got the largest population of elephant in Tanzania. Out in Katavi, I mean, it's the last remaining massive herds of buffalo in all of Africa. So you'll see them in herds of over 1,000 sometimes. It's also got the highest population of hippos and crocodiles in Tanzania. Mikumi National Park has got a really good chance of seeing leopards. I haven't got statistics on their leopard, but most of our guests are seeing them there. And tree climbing lions, which is quite rare. As well, it's neighbouring Dzungwa Mountains National Park, where it's got over 250 endemic species of plant life and primates, including the Sanje mangabe and the red hair colobus. And, you know, they just exist in this tiny little national park and nowhere else in the world. So there's so much going for it. And these, you know, as I said, large national parks, so a lot more to explore as well.
Yeah, the Ruaha is so famous for the lions, and I think this is what people know it for and want to come and see. And as you said, prides of over 20 lions, just absolutely incredible. But also the painted wolf or African wild dog, depending on how you what naming convention you want to use. Also a very good place to see wild dog. What makes it so good for wild dog compared to other parts of Africa?
Yeah, I mean, Southern Tanzania has Africa's best stronghold of wild dog population. If you ask me the question as to why that is, I'm actually not too sure of what's led it to be the stronghold. But I know that it's an excellent place to see them because it is Africa's best stronghold. But Nyerere has the highest density of wild dog in Africa. But to be completely honest, we're seeing it just as much in Ruaha, in Katavi, and sometimes Mikumi as well. So it's one thing if you want to see wild dog, go visit Nyerere, you've got a really good chance. But really, if you're doing a full southern circuit, you've got an even better chance because all the parks do see them. And particularly when they've got pups and they den, they stay put for longer. So the problem is that you can't predict, so you can't book your holiday around that. But a lot of our guests do get to see them, and even few weeks ago, we had some guests staying at Ruaha River Lodge, and not everyone knows what wild. They're not universally known species, and so we have a lot of first-time safari goers who've never heard of them. So they'll come to breakfast and they say, "Oh, these things are around our room this morning," and they show us the picture, and it's a pride of wild dog, and they didn't even realize how rare that was. And also because it's uncrowded, it does. Well, we believe it allows for prolonged encounters. They're not rushing off. They're not feeling, because they can be, they can sort of do their own thing. Whereas when there's not lots of vehicles around, you can spend quite a long time with them.
And they're such a good sign of a really healthy ecosystem, I think, and good protection. And I remember one of the closest wild dog sightings I had was in the Okavango Delta. We'd stopped to have morning coffee break and got out the vehicle, and a dog ran right past us, almost as if a domestic dog. And he was looking for the rest of his pack. So he was really on a mission and not interested in us at all. And it's a wonderful experience to have these encounters with nature, and especially if you know how special it is. The guests who saw the dogs and probably thought they were just an everyday sighting, now that they know how special it is, they're probably going home and telling all their friends and family about what they saw there.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you mentioned about how big the South is. The northern circuit of Tanzania is much more manageable in terms of logistics, but the South is so vast, which is why I guess one of the reasons why it's so successful in conservation. But in terms of logistics for people to getting around the national parks in the South, is it essential to use aircraft? Can you drive? Can you give our listeners some ideas of what the logistics would entail if they were doing a southern circuit?
Yeah, it is not essential to use bush flights. It's common. I mean, it tends to be the way for a lot of people because of the distances, but it is not essential. Driving safaris are certainly possible in the South. Not so much as you go further west, because then it gets really far away. But in the key area of the southern circuit, Nyerere, Mikumi, Ruaha, we have a lot of guests coming to stay with us who are doing drive-through safaris. Having said that, most people don't have lots of time, so you wanting to maximize the time on game drives in the bush, and that's where flying does sort of help with Dar es Salaam and Zanzibar, sort of the key points of entry for the Southern Circuit, and with a lot of international flights connections. So from there, we have daily scheduled flights. We run our own bush airline, Safari Airlink, which started out to connect these remote destinations together. So it's pretty straightforward. You select the different parks you want to visit, and it gets connected up by bush flights. And then return back to the airport at the end or to the beach. And then we're driving. It's a safari vehicle with a guide meets you at the airport and you embark on your journey. The parks are quite well spaced out in that the journey time's pretty similar between each one at around 7 hours between parks.
Okay, so that's manageable. For people who don't mind being in a car for 7 hours, the driving it's okay.
There's different rationales, isn't there? So it's not all about price. It does come out cheaper to do drive-through safaris, but that's not the only reason to do them. Others enjoy exploring the country by road because you do see more of it. The journey is part of the experience. You're going to see more of Tanzania, meet local cultures, pass through the villages, see the changing landscapes, which is less possible by plane. So there is a small trade-off. When you fly, you miss all of that. But you are having to be in a car for 7 hours.
Yeah, so it depends on your priority as always. So
yeah.
What do you want to get out of your holiday? Do you want to maximize your time in the bush? Do you want to explore more of the country, get to know Tanzania? And that's where having a tailor-made trip for you specifically really comes into play.
Absolutely.
So people often ask about which is the best time to travel to Tanzania, and especially the South. I'm sure you get these questions a lot as well. The green season I think there's a lot to be said for traveling in the green season because it's got its own unique and special things that you don't find during the dry season. So would you define the green season for the South as being November to May, roughly, or slightly different to that? And, yeah.
It holds some changes. I'm really glad you asked the question because I'm totally on the same page. The green season, I'd say, so, the rains begin in November. It does slightly differ across the South, but more or less November. And these are short, we call them the short rains, November to February. And these are short showers in the afternoon. And this is the best of both worlds. You haven't got so much rain that it's ruining your experience. You're not getting soaking wet all the time. It's not too overgrown. You're still going to be able to see a lot of wildlife. But the high season, or the high tourist season, in the dry season, which is June to the end of October, it's fantastic because of course it's the most predictable wildlife viewing. But it's so dry, and the landscape is very kind of
brown.
Dry. And then November, December, January, it's lush, vibrant, colourful, dramatic skies. So particularly for photographers, it's great. And you still get to see a lot of wildlife. Whereas when you go into March, April, May, this has changed. It's now continuous rain rather than short showers in the afternoon. So it does impact your experience in that it's a lot wetter, a lot more damp, a lot more insects. It's much more overgrown. So it's harder to find wildlife. And we do close some of our camps because of access problems. But in terms of, there's something for everyone. And for the adventurous sort, it's a really fun time to visit because the river's in full flood. You'll get stuck in the mud sometimes. For those that enjoy those sorts of more, things don't go right all the time. It's a lot more rough and ready experience that some enjoy. But for photography in particular, really that November to February is great. And I should have mentioned when you asked about like important wildlife sort of in the South is the bird life, and that's also to do with the green season. Ruaha has 530 species recorded. Katavi's 375, Mikumi 400, Nyerere I think it's 440, and so the green season is the peak migratory birds come through. So you're going to see the majority of those species during that time as well.
Yeah, I always try to encourage people, if they can, according to their work or their other schedules, family schedules, if they can travel in the shoulder or green season, it is so rewarding. Unexpectedly so, birds being one of them, the colour and the brightness of the bush. And I like your point that it's not a continual rain. People coming from like Northern Europe, for example, or San Francisco, when you say it rains, they sometimes think it's raining the entire day from when you wake up in the morning and to when you go to bed at night. And it's not like that at all. It's short, sharp thunderstorms and just refreshes the air. I love that smell of the earth after a thunderstorm, and then you're out in the bush again. It's really stunning.
Yeah, and not to mention that on another side of things is that we're talking about how quiet the South is and how exclusive it is in the peak season. And then as soon as you get into sort of the green off season, then you really are going to be seeing stuff without having to share with many others at all. It's sort of next level wild. And then if you want, down the kind of pricing route, it tends to be lower rates as well. So you get a lot of value for money during that time.
Yeah, I agree. You should definitely look at the green season if you wanted to spend longer in a place, or if budget's a concern. You can definitely your dollar goes much further there.
Yeah.
What about misconceptions, Oliver? What do you think is the biggest misconception people might have if they don't know a lot about, perhaps they're listening to this podcast, they don't know a lot about Southern Tanzania, or they've heard one or two things that might be a bit negative? What do you think is the biggest conception and how to counter that?
Sure. There's quite a few big misconceptions, so I'll stick to the biggest. But for me, the number one is that it's not suitable for first-time safari goers. I hear this a lot about how it's a repeat visitor destination. I think it's been confused. The majority of people are repeat visitors, and that's just because the North is so famous, because the South isn't so famous. It just tends to be that way, that people have been on safari, they've heard about the South, and then they come back to experience it. But it doesn't mean it has to be. It doesn't mean that it should be. There aren't many reasons I can think of, if any, why it wouldn't be suitable. And I think in the old days, when we started off, I can understand there's a logic where it was definitely more, rough and wild, bucket showers, no hot water, no communication. And in the North or in Kenya, you might have more infrastructure and sort of more luxurious home camps. So then it would make sense saying, like, those are the first time safari goers. For those that don't know if they enjoy safari yet, they need to kind of test the waters. And therefore the South wouldn't be the best place to start, because if they don't like it, then they're in trouble. But now things have changed, and we have comfortable camps. You've got high-end camps, you've got mid-range camps, and they've got ensuite bathrooms, solar heated running water, comfortable beds. All of them have internet connectivity now. So there's no reason for why it can't be for first timers. So that's my biggest misconception. And we briefly spoke about logistics. I think that's another. People think. I think it's more just not understanding, that it's a very complicated system logistically, but it isn't. I think it's just there's less information out there on how to do it. But there are scheduled flights every single day connecting all the parks together. There are lots of operators, ground handlers that do road safaris. It's as simple as arriving in Dar es Salaam and being taken around the camps. Yeah.
Yeah, I really like this myth busting, and I think Zambia also is seen as a destination for second-time safari goers, similar to Southern Tanzania. But I agree, you can have an absolutely incredible first-time safari experience. You're going to see all the animals you wish to see. You're going to it's going to be such an uncrowded experience. It's going to be really exclusive and wonderful in either Zambia or Southern Tanzania.
There's a lot more. There are far more people nowadays, I think. There are far more people nowadays who set out looking for less crowded areas. So even if you haven't been on a safari before and you're now doing your research on where to go, I think, the Serengeti is well known, and the North is well known, and if you would like to go, that's absolutely valid. But if you're all part of what you would like is a quieter area, then there's no reason not to go straight to the South.
Well, I hope we've given lots of people lots of reasons to go to the South on their next safari or their first safari. So you guys, you are Oliver Fox of Fox's Camp. You have a family-run business in Southern Tanzania, and if I'm correct, you were one of the first lodge operators or safari operators in the South. So that must have come with some challenges being the first. I think it's always challenging to be the first, but also some rewards and some advantages of being the first, like in terms of location, etc. How would you describe the challenges and rewards of being one of the first safari operators in Southern Tanzania?
Yeah, I mean, I'll speak sort of on behalf of my family's experiences. Of course, I'm the younger generation, so I'm enjoying all the rewards and not having to go through all the challenges. But I've heard an awful lot about all the challenges, and I understand how so much of the way we do things today comes as a result of the challenges that were faced in the past. So almost all the rewards come off the back of a challenge. So I think the key one is that when we started off in the 60s, into the 70s and 80s, it was during socialism. And during this era, you couldn't buy anything. You couldn't get around very easily. And anything you wanted to do, you essentially had to produce it yourself. And so, as a result, quite stubborn, I suppose. What we wanted to do, it meant that we had to find solutions to each of these issues. And so we started our own farm where we produce our own meat, dairy, fruit, vegetables, tea, coffee, which then get distributed to the camps. We planted forestry, so we now have planted over 3 million trees. And a part of this is that we process our own timber, which then build all our camps. But it also is it also means that we are carbon neutral. And I mean, with the Bush Airline, we're emitting only 10% of what we're absorbing through the forestry. So we're the first carbon negative airline. And so today, the reward is that it's responsible tourism, but we didn't set out for responsible tourism. It was because it was an ethos of self-reliance. So not only is it responsible, but it leads to logical and strong operations in how we do things. A lot of planning. You can't have last minute we've run out of bacon, because it's not easy to get more. And so yeah, that self-reliance ethos is a major reward to the challenges that we faced. I know a big one was that we were doing it alone, and when it comes to marketing, we've now got these camps, but we need to market them. Well, we're the only ones down here. There was a few in Nyerere, so it was very difficult, and we weren't marketers either. That wasn't our strength. So when more operators came down to the south, I mean, some might think that we wouldn't have liked that, but actually we were more than welcome, because now we can work together. We've got much, just a stronger force to promote Southern Tanzania. And I suppose the other one I hear about a lot from my grandparents in particular was the fear of, one of the challenges being the fear of what's going to happen to these wildernesses in the 70s and 80s. There was no tourism in this time. So what reason does authorities and what reason does people have to protect these areas, and what's the motivation? So being a part of the build-up of tourism in the south, and tourism being the reason these areas are being protected, is hugely rewarding. And Ruaha National Park, for instance, it was our family's, we see it as our home. It's the closest to where we were living in the Southern Highlands. And my grandfather co-founded Friends of Ruaha Society before tourism was really a thing, to help protect the environment surrounding, and they did patrols, education of the importance, and like any charity, I suppose, or society, the best thing happened where we became obsolete, because it came to the point where enough tourism came in, enough resources were available that the national parks could take over that protection and ensure that it's being looked after. Sadani National Park is one I haven't mentioned, on the southeast coast of Tanzania. Relatively new. My grandfather and then my father were employed at a cattle ranch there, which was about 500 kilometers squared, and it was being wound down. It was being sold, and it was a key. It was a beautiful wilderness area, and there was a game reserve around, but it wasn't large enough to sustain or to look after the wildlife that were there. Elephants would roam far beyond the borders. So it was them who then were a driving force, and working with the government to turn it into Sadani National Park. And so now that's a reward, looking back at our experience being there for so long has led to the creation of a whole national park. And I like to think that, that as stakeholders that have been around for so long, experience from, the generations, grandparents, we friends, we bond with our communities and work together. And so I think that helps a lot. We can use that experience to, maybe suggest certain changes or ways to look after things well. So yeah.
It's a fascinating story. What pioneering people your grandparents were, and amazing that for 3 generations you've been able to have this kind of impact, like creating this new national park, and the impact that you've had in the parks where you and the communities where you operate. It's huge, and bringing a lot of benefit to the people and the wildlife of Tanzania. So yeah, it must be really rewarding and great that the next generation can continue this, hopefully for many, many years to come, because it's such a force for good. So yeah, it's a totally fascinating origin story. I'm sure not many lodge operators can say they've got the same story as you and been going as long as you. So yeah, big well done on that.
Well, yeah, to the earlier generations, really. But it's big challenges, but it sounds like they had a lot of fun during, the process of it. And, during that time, there really was nobody as well. So very spoiled to enjoy the parks all on our own, basically. So, yeah.
Yeah, what a time to be alive. So Oliver, if our listeners are interested in finding out more about Fox's camps, about Southern Tanzania, about what you offer, where should they go?
Yeah, so we're active on social media, Instagram or Facebook at Fox's Safari Camps, and then our website www.foxessafaricamps.com, and you should find an awful lot about us on these platforms, and then contact information so if you want to reach out and find anything further.
Great. Thank you so much for coming onto the podcast, and thanks for your time today, Oliver.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. It was great to share everything.
Thank you for listening. Leopard specializes in curating extraordinary journeys. Get in touch with us to help you plan the trip of your dreams.